Welcome to Random Conversations. I'm Federico Spadoni, and here with me it's Janus handling the mixer, and you are back here on the show on Portocali Radio. As you know, here we will try to talk about a different country for each episode, and for today our country is Australia, the down under land, or the Oz, they say. I think they say like this. I'm not quite sure. I'm not from there. But, okay, so before we start with our guest from today, we will play an Australian song, and we'll be back after that. And this was Joffrey Gurmul Yunupingu with the song Wai Yatul. I think I'm pronouncing this pretty badly, but that's the best I can do. So for today, our guest here is Rita. Hi, Rita.
Hello.
She's from Australia, and thanks for coming.
It's a pleasure.
All right. So to start, tell us something about you, where from Australia you are from, and what do you do, and why are you here in Athens?
Okay. I was born in Sydney, and now I live in a small town about 200 kilometres from Sydney. It's called Goulburn. It's a country town.
Is it 200 kilometers close to Sydney, or no? I mean, for Australian distances, I mean.
It's not far.
All right, it's not far.
No, not far. A couple of hours.
All right.
Yeah. And what I do, I'm retired now. I used to be a choir director.
All right.
And community choirs. And I was also a shiatsu therapist.
All right.
They were my two main occupations.
Multitasking.
But for the last 30 years, I've been volunteering for an organisation called Service Civil International.
Yeah.
Or in Australia, it's called International Volunteers for Peace.
Okay.
And that's the reason I'm in Europe at the moment, because I'm now on the international executive of Service Civil International. And I'm here for a couple of meetings.
Okay. So you are in a big travel, I know,
yes.
throughout the world, basically.
Well, not throughout the world, but yes.
Okay.
I have to do a bit of travelling in this role. Yeah.
All right. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
And okay, we are going to listen another song from an Australian artist that I'm pretty sure is very well known. Is Nick Cave, and here it is. And we are back on the show here with Rita. As you know, if you have listened to the show, hopefully, before we start the conversation with Rita again, I will give you some facts and numbers about the country we talk about. And the country for today, as I mentioned before, is Australia. So we're going to start by saying that Australia's population is around 23 million. The area Australia occupies is 7.7 million square kilometers. That it's incredibly huge. The official language is English. The main religion is Christianity. The biggest city is Sydney. The type of government that there is in Australia is a federal parliamentary constitutional monarchy. The Queen is Elizabeth II. The Prime Minister is Turnbull. And regarding how Australia is structured, Australia is divided in 6 states: the Western Australia, South Australia, the Queensland, New South Wales, Tasmania and Victoria, and 2 territories. That is the Northern Territory and the territory of the capital city. All right, were these facts true?
I think they're pretty true, yes.
You think they're pretty true. Okay, but we're going to test again your Australian knowledge with a little true or false questionnaire. All right, can we start?
Okay.
All right, let's start with the first true or false. So, Sydney is Australia's capital. True or false?
It's false.
It's false. What is Australia capital?
It's Canberra.
Canberra. This when we were playing the capital games with some friends of mine, Australia was always where I was mistaken, because everybody's like, okay, it's Sydney. And we were checking. No, it's not Sydney. Okay, it's Melbourne probably. No, it's not Melbourne. So it's Canberra. And from what I've understood, Canberra is a city that basically has been not built, but...
yeah, it was the site for the capital city was chosen because it's halfway between Sydney and Melbourne.
Okay, so they put it in the middle.
They couldn't decide which one should be the capital, so they chose a spot right in the middle.
All right, seems like a good solution at the end.
And it was a tiny, very tiny village.
All right.
And they basically got a designer.
All right.
But Walter Burley Griffin, and he designed the city.
He designed the city for being a governmental city. All right. So statement number 2. Europeans arrived in Australia in the 1600s. True or false?
I believe some arrived in that time, yes.
Yeah,
but they didn't stay.
The first visitor arrived in 1606.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's when it was discovered, we could say.
Mm-hmm.
Or even though it's not the real
it was
term.
Discovered by Europeans.
Yeah, discovered by Europeans, exactly. So, number 3. Australia was once England's prison.
That's yes, it was a place where England sent they transported the transgressors.
Yeah,
because the prisons were so full they couldn't. They didn't know what to do with them.
I read that the number of prisoners that were sent to Australia was around 500,000, and 25 of which were women. I don't know if these numbers are... 25,000.
25,000.
Not just 25, yeah.
Possibly. I have no idea of the numbers. But these days, if you can find somewhere in your history that one of your ancestors was transported to Australia, it's something to be very proud of.
Yeah, okay, that's nice. But I also know that the sites the prisons are now... UNESCO heritage sites. They are enlisted in the UNESCO heritage sites of Australia. You know?
I don't know about that. I'm sorry.
It's true.
They weren't really in prison. They were made to farm and work.
All right.
So
okay.
So mostly not actually imprisoned.
All right. Okay, let's move on. Number 4. Australia is the home of many micronations. True or false?
Now, I don't know about any micronations. I have heard in my lifetime some small claims for secession, but I don't know that any of them have succeeded.
From what I've researched, I know that there are this few micronations, such as the Principality of Wee or Rainbow Creek, or my favorite, Empire of Atlantium. These are little states that, of course, are not recognized by any government, that were created by small groups or individuals because, they were protesting high taxes or just because they wanted to. So they just started to do it. But okay, it's not really real states, of course. Okay, moving on. Number 5. 60% of Australia is a desert. True or false?
Well, that's false, but it looks as though 60% is desert because the whole centre of Australia is desert.
Yeah, but it's false, the statement, because actually it's 35%. But what we can say is that, as Rita said, 85% of the population lives around the coastline. Mm. But, the desertic climate is not the only climate you find in Australia, of course. You have a tropical climate more in the north. You have a subtropical climate east and west. You have the grasslands, the more in the south. And you have temperate area near Sydney in the southeast, for example. Right?
Temperate areas.
Temperate. Thank you for correcting me. That's very nice. And so after these first statements, let's go with another song, and we will be back soon.
πορτοκαλί. Η αλληλεγγύη έχει χρώμα και φωνή.
All right, the song we just heard was from Peter Garrett. Is This Still Matters. So we continue with our true or false here with Rita. So first thing to put in a luggage when you go to Australia is the sun cream. True or false?
That's true.
That's true, right?
Yeah. There's a hole in the ozone layer over Australia.
Yeah, right over Australia.
And skin cancer is very high on the list of problems in Australia.
Yeah.
And you can, 10 minutes in the sun in the middle of the day can cause skin cancer.
What the hell? Okay, and from what I know, also you can find the sun cream available in some supermarkets for free, or in some stores for free. That's from a friend of mine who went there, told me, but I don't know if it's true. I have you to tell me.
I haven't seen it for free, but certainly if there are any events where they expect a lot of people, there will definitely be free sunscreen.
All right. Thank you. Number 7. Australia is one of the least biodiverse country in the world. True or false?
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, it's completely false. Actually, it's one of the most biodiverse country in the world. And in order to protect this biodiversity, there have been they created some protected areas where this biodiversity is kept going. Also because, from what I've understood, the fact that many foreign species were brought to Australia created some damage to the population, domestic, let's say, to the domestic animal population, because they clashed with these new animals and created a problem. It killed a lot of biodiversity there.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
And so starting with rabbits.
Yeah. The European rabbit created many problems.
Pigs, dogs, cats, and now cane toads.
All right.
They're a huge problem.
The cane toads.
And they were brought into, because there was a lot of sugar cane grown in the north of Australia, in Queensland.
Yeah.
The cane toads were brought in to eat the snakes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they eat all the sort of micro animals, the small frogs, they just eat everything, and they're heading south in very large numbers.
Okay, so let's be aware of this. All right, number 8. Australia's main exports are raw materials such as coal, iron, and gold.
Coal, definitely.
Definitely coal.
Yes, and iron ore, yes. And I'm surprised about gold, but it certainly has been big in the past.
Yeah, big in the past.
Yeah.
I was hearing that mining was an activity that was really relevant and really massive done in Australia, right?
Yeah, there was a gold rush.
Rush. Yeah. Okay. All right. Number 9. The biggest property in Australia is bigger than Belgium. True or false?
Probably.
It's true. It's incredible. Even this tells you about the density of the vastity of this country, right? Yeah. Okay, number 10. That for me is the funniest one. Australia had a war with emus, and Australia won. True or false?
With emus. Well, I believe there's an entry in Wikipedia about this war.
For sure.
Emu war, but we certainly have kangaroo wars that still continue, but I don't know anything about any emu wars.
I can tell you that the statement was false because Australia lost the war against emus. But okay, now we're going to listen to a song, and after we keep on talking about this emu war because it's worth it. Back here on the show, what you listened to was Midnight Oil with The Dead Heart. So we left you with the emu war. So, and our guest here, Rita, didn't know about it. And, if I was Australian, I also wouldn't want to know about it because it's pretty embarrassing. So this is what went down. So basically, in 1932, Australia had a military operation in Western Australia to reduce the number of emus that were destroying the wheat crops of the farmers over there. And the problem was this, that the farmers that were there had a call to have some help against these emus that were destroying all their crops. And, for them it was a problem, an economic problem. So Australian government decided to send some military men over there, led by a general, the George Pierce, and a major, Mr. G.P.W. Meredith. But these guys, were totally beaten by the emus that proved to be a really hard species to fight, because they were moving in small groups, and so it was really hard for the military to kill them with guns. And so they tried one time to cull them, but they didn't succeed. And they tried a second time again to cull them because of the same problem. They were still destroying all the crops. But again, the emus won. They were not able to manage the population of emus that now are still there and creating some problems. But okay, beside this digression that I found really funny, and because you don't really hear about war against emus. But we will continue. We'll probably listen to another song. But first, let me tell you about the next topic we're going to talk about here with Rita. That it's a more serious topic than the emu war, of course. But it's the stolen generation. So to introduce this topic, we're going to play a song of Archie Roach, and the title is "Took the Children Away." So let's listen to the song, and then we tackle this issue. Back here on the show with Rita, as we were telling you before. Now we're going to talk about the stolen generation, and that is an issue that I was completely unaware of, actually, and I've just discovered throughout my researches for this episode. But I will let our friend Rita here describe a little bit what this was.
So a little bit of history. So when Europeans arrived in Australia, the very first arrivals, they tried to communicate with the Aboriginal people and have good relations. Mm-hmm. But with successive governors, they decided, basically there was a war.
All right.
There was a war between the Aborigines and the white people. And this is something that the white Australians don't know much about.
All right.
I've had to go to some effort to learn a bit about the Aboriginal story in Australia. Okay. And so I know a little bit, but not a huge amount. But so there were different governors and different governments had different attitudes towards Aboriginal people. But they started off by saying there's no one living in it. It's an empty land, terra nullius, it was called. It means empty land, so nobody living there. Then they said they're savages, they're inferior. They did a whole lot of scientific experiments, measuring their skulls, etc., Very things that we look on now as being
cruel.
Well, yeah, and idiotic.
Yeah,
maybe. And then they decided that. So there was already some intermarriage happening between blacks and whites, or not marriage, but relationships. So children born of half-caste children, and the government decided that the best thing they could that they should take the children away and educate them as white.
Okay.
That this was the way that they needed to integrate the Aboriginal population into the white population. The best way to do it was to take the children, put them with white families so they'd grow up with white understandings.
But they were taking just half castes?
In the beginning. In the beginning they were taking just half castes, and they had a sort of grade for measuring the whiteness. And because the two cultures are actually very, very different, and it's they don't really fit together well. Aboriginal people have a very holistic view of the world.
Yeah.
And so that was a policy, and it lasted.
Yeah, this is what surprised me a lot, that this was a policy made by the government with this Victorian Aboriginal Protection Act from 1869 that included the earliest legislation that authorized child removal from Aboriginal parents.
Yes.
So this was
and the
state decision.
And the adults were also moved on to reserves. Mm-hmm. And the children who grew up with the white families, I mean, it's a terrible story. It's not only so terrible that they took them from their parents, but they were not allowed to speak their own language. They were treated very badly. They were put with white families. They were not allowed to contact their brothers and sisters or their parents. A lot of them didn't even know they were Aboriginal. They became ashamed of being Aboriginal.
Exactly, yeah.
And then they were given as like domestic servants to white families. They were never paid.
Whoa.
So the story has many layers, and they're all. It's a very bad story.
So from what I understood, this was in place until the late 60s.
Yes.
1969, 1970s, right?
Yes.
So now it has been more than 40 years that this thing is over, okay? And what I want to ask you is, I mean, in the last 20 years, in the last 30 years, what was the conversation about this in Australia? I mean, what was the response? I mean, what was the consequence? Also, the consequences of this.
There's been a big effort in the last 20 or 30 years to educate white people about Aboriginal issues. And this story about the stolen generations is a very big part of that.
Yeah.
And I think it was very shocking for us to learn about this.
Yeah.
And there's a reconciliation council that have put together a educational package. And the Aboriginal people themselves, there are big efforts to sort of for people to find their parents, and usually the parents may be deceased, but at least to find their relatives and be integrated back into their tribal families.
All right. And I heard that the government lately put out an apology.
Yes.
Right, in 2008.
That's correct.
Yeah,
yes.
Former President Rudd, I think.
Kevin Rudd, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd.
Prime Minister Kevin Rudd.
Yes.
Put out an apology text.
He did. He made a speech, an apology speech.
Okay, for that.
It was very moving, and it was very important that it happened.
Yeah, it was. You know, it's the first step. You know? It's the first step. Okay, so the story. It's a heavy story, and we're going to listen to, again, to...
Oh, can I just say before you go to the music?
Sure.
So there's a wonderful film called Rabbit Proof Fence.
Rabbit Proof Fence.
If you get a chance to find it, it's the director is Philip Noyce, and it's about 3 little girls who were stolen and put into a home, and they escaped.
All right.
And they found their way home. They walked almost across Australia, just using their knowledge of the territory.
All right.
And it's a really amazing story. And then right at the end of the movie, the 3 old women appear. All right. And they were actually these children.
All right.
Who did this.
I'm going to actually suggest another picture, not a movie, but a documentary that is called Lousy Little Sixpence. That is a documentary from 1983 and it was the first film that dealt with this issue. It was directed and produced by Alec Morgan. It won several international awards and Australian awards, even though for the first 2 years the Australian Broadcasting Corporation did not air this movie. That now, though, is part of the standard educational institutions fair, and it has a high influence on the kids, I hope. And okay, so as I was saying before, let's listen to another song by Geoffrey Yunupingu that is called Baru, and here it is for you. Back here on the show with Rita, that was sharing that is sharing with us some stories about her home country, Australia. And okay, now actually let's talk about something more light in a certain way. So you were telling me that a problem that it's pretty relevant in Australia is this bush fires, right?
Yeah.
Especially now that it's summer.
Yes, there's a bushfire burning out of control. It's usual in summer.
Yeah.
The summers are getting hotter and hotter with climate change.
Yeah.
And it's been the hottest summer on record. And every summer there's bushfires out of control. There's one that just happens to be near where I live.
Yeah.
So I know about that one at the moment. And I've been travelling for 2 months, so actually I've had very little news of home. But I know about this fire, and my other reason for being interested is because my daughter's the captain of the Rural Bushfire Brigade.
Oh, right.
So she's probably out there fighting the fire right now.
All right, thank you. Thanks to her. All right.
Well, I've just told 2 rather heavy stories, so
yeah, that's true.
I wanted to tell you that Australia's...
and the emu story was not pleasing. Was
No,
not pleasing for Australians.
So, we have wonderful beaches. I suppose you've heard that before.
Yeah, I heard that.
But they are very nice. They're very clean, and we have a lot of fabulous nature.
Yeah.
A lot of really beautiful variety as well, because between the tropical north and the desert and the grassland, as you mentioned, and a lot of natural parks, and also in Melbourne, the biggest Greek population outside of Greece.
Yeah, this is what I heard. It's true. Yeah,
so please come and visit Australia.
Yeah, we will try for sure. So thank you for listening to us. This was our show. We thank again Rita to have come here. We thank Janus for being our greatest mixing at the mixer. And we hope to hear from you soon and see you next time.